And so I'm in a season where there's been a culture change at Mars Hill, and I feel very appreciated. We feel very appreciated, very loved, very encouraged, very supported. But it wasn't always that way. Early on when we started the church, I was angry all of the time, and then sometimes I was asleep. That was pretty much the emotional variety for me. And it felt like just a real strong culture of entitlement and expectation and demand and ingratitude, if I'm really honest. It's not that way today, so I could talk about it. And I'll never forget the early years of the church. For the first, I think it was 3 years, we didn't take a salary. I was working full-time outside of the church. We were small and broke and poor. And nobody ever called me pastor except a guy named Pete, and he did so as a joke. Hey, pastor. He always did it as a joke. So that was my one seemingly respectful guy who was really disrespectful. And then, and I remember that Grace and I would have literally upwards of a few thousand people in our home every year for small groups. The offices were there, the small groups were there, the premarital was there, the membership, everything was there. And literally, I don't remember hardly anybody ever even saying thank you. I remember over and over and over, the spring and the summer was particularly brutal because we'd have these weddings. Everybody was getting married, which meant usually some sort of chicken dinner on Friday night with a rehearsal, and then Saturday do the wedding, and then Sunday preach. And so that meant usually spring and summer there wouldn't be a day off for 4 months or so because it would be church during the week and then weddings on weekends in addition to church. And I never forget, like all these couples that we had into our home and we invested in for months and did the premarital for, and then I'd go officiate their wedding and nobody even say thank you. There were couples, more than one, but one in particular, we invested in them, we helped them, we did their premarital for months in our home, flew out of state to go do their wedding, didn't even say thank you, flew back to preach on Sunday, and they never showed up at church again. And I called them up and I said, well, we miss you guys. You haven't been at church since you got married. And he said, well, her dad said he wouldn't pay for the wedding unless it was in a church. So now that we've had the wedding, we don't have to go to church anymore. It's like, wow. And for me in that season, I dealt with it in a sinful way, okay? And how many of you, your experience is like mine, when you're in a season when you're really encouraged and you feel loved like I do today, it's pretty easy to say, oh yeah, the Lord is good and I love you, and it just sort of flows a little easier. But then there's those other seasons you're like, I don't know if the Lord is good, and I'm pretty sure I don't love you, you know? And how many of you are in one of those seasons where with your family, with your friends, with your work, there's a culture of entitlement or ingratitude or expectation or criticism? And in those years when I was in sin and I responded sinfully, I started getting bitter against people. I started getting angry, self-righteous, judgmental, grumbling. My attitude was not very good. Sometimes I would serve, but do so out of an impure motive, and sometimes I just wouldn't serve. Like, well, they don't even care. Why even try? And I tell you this because the church has changed. But for those of you that are in those seasons, how's it going for you? And what do you do? And that brings us to the text of Scripture today. And it speaks in a very timely way about appreciation. And I think this is a timely word because I believe our world is more rude, critical, and demanding than ever. Okay, for all of you who work in the service industry, I just apologize in general for almost everyone, okay? What a horrible job it is to serve people with certain attitudes. And this culture of entitlement is so deep that, it would be laughable if an elected official stood up today and said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We'd say, that guy's hilarious. Look at those funny jokes that he tells, talking about our responsibilities instead of our rights. The whole world is filled with a lack of appreciation, thankfulness, and gratitude. That being said, as we come to Paul's words today, I don't know if you're in a season like I am where you feel really appreciated and encouraged, or you feel really unappreciated and discouraged. The question is, what do you do with it?